Hey, Nohandsgamer, welcome to the Fireside.
Hey, great to be here.
For those of you who might not know, Nohandsgamer is one of the top NA Grandmaster right now, who represents the North American region. And then in the Grandmaster system for the 2 seasons he's been in, for the second season for 2020, he actually got number two, ranked number two on on Division A and got into the playoffs. And then also for this season, 2021, season one, he is the number one points earner in the Grandmaster system. So very, very strong. I actually one of the few NA stars right now. So how's it going for the off season?
Oh, it's great. It's I'm trying to get all the inclinations to do like other things out of my system. So when GM comes, I can just focus and deny all other areas of my life to just focus on Hearthstone gameplay. So I'm hanging, sort of a lot of the restrictions have gone down. So I'm hanging out with friends. I'm doing outdoor activities, just trying to do as much as I can. It's a good time. It's been a long time waiting. So
that would be great. Yeah, you really, for those of you listening, he's really looking like he's vibing, like way much different from what you guys are seeing from the GM webcam.
yeah,
Also, we
it's
are
yeah, I mean, even when we met, I think during the prep for
playoffs for
the
the GM
playoffs,
playoffs.
I'm just so serious where I'm all day, every day, I'm thinking about how do I win this playoffs, which I did not, obviously neither of us quite succeeded, but how do I what's this? What should I invest my time in? I'm eating, I'm watching VODs. I'm just like every single day. It's just that level. And I think that's part of the reason was successful this season is just preparation, and if because I think everybody in GM is very talented, and I don't come with the mindset of, oh, I'm going to be more talented than my opponents. I don't even come in the mindset of, oh, I'm going to bring better decks. I think I'm in the mindset of like, I'm going to prep better. I'm going to know this matchup. I'm going to know this element of the matchup. I'm going to know, oh, you can't do this play that you had to just play it 10 times to know. And that's the way I approach it, and that's done well for me. But yeah.
Yeah, just for prepping and knowing the matchup and prepping a lot of the times. You are one of the few people who is very enjoying playing priest on ladder. Is that a very controversial thing to say?
Yeah, it's weird. I like priest. Priest is the slow grindy victory. And I think so. I've thought about this, and I've thought about like what tempo is and what value is, and I think priest has so many ways to reset tempo advantage. You're head on board and you're head on life, and all of a sudden Blade Master Apotheosis. Now their board's gone, your life's this. They're running out of value. They go Sect Veil Weaver with a 2-mana discounted Gift of the Luminance and renew and discover another renew. All of a sudden, a whole new hand, and that's part of I think what's interesting about Priest is it's very hard to convert an advantage into a win. So it's a completely different style of game, and I like that long-term mindset of I come from. So when I was younger, I played chess, and I play some chess now, and I realize like I'm not actually. I don't have the good theory on chess, except for a few parts of the game. But what I was really good at was
Yes.
calculating, where I would say, okay, this play is going to lead to that play, is going to lead to this play. And when I'm doing Hearthstone, I can think, okay, I want to redo this turn. If I do that, and 3 turns, like I won't be able to do this with Zarella, or I might not, or I need to save this resource for a Veil Weaver because I'm running low on stuff, and if I can't save these resources, I won't have enough stuff to fill my hand. So just being able to think multiple turns advance. And I think that's why I had a lot of success with OTK Demon Hunter, because I hadn't even played OTK Demon Hunter up until 2 weeks before the GM, because I was really good at playing against it. And I think OTK Demon Hunter is a style where it has very defined win conditions and very defined spots.
I always have this analogy for decks like Freeze Mage back in the days, or Mali Druid with Ultimate Infestation,
Mhm.
or like what we're saying right now, OTK Demon Hunter. They don't have any creative buys, and then they draw fast. I always have this
Yeah.
analogy of they are the decks that you're hugging your deck to play the game. You're constantly linking everything in your hand with what you have in
Mhm.
your deck.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have to be just thinking, okay, if I did get this top deck, if I get this top deck, how likely I hit Skull? What happens if I hit Il'gynoth? If I go Skull, maybe I win if I hit an Il'gynoth thing, but if I don't, do I just lose? Is there a way around that? And there's all these different lines, because you could be like, maybe I can just take a bunch of damage and swing back. If I use this lifesteal card, well, if I hit Il'gynoth fast, do I not have lethal? And then it kind of screws me over. And you have to balance all those things in your head. And I think a lot of people can't do that. They just want to spend mana, play minions, which is,
Yeah,
but yeah.
but one thing you mentioned that I really love, you said about calculating, but you actually talk about very two different style of calculating. One is like the OTK Demon Hunter, and the other is the Priest, which it has a lot of
Mhm.
creative buys. And then for those created by decks, which we only have Priest right now in the meta,
Yeah.
they are actually not so easy to calculate, or it's like way different kind of calculation in terms of, hey, you need to be very you need to have the spell pool in your mind, and then you need to constantly be aware all the possibilities, or maybe at least like top 3 possibilities that you're looking for when you're trying to make those plays.
Yeah.
It's not like,
Yeah.
hey, when you're playing OTK Demon Hunter, there's like, I'm gonna save my double jump for turn 7 just to try to
Yeah.
hit the skulls. And also the illiterary studies, it's relatively a small pool. You have to remember
Yeah.
some key cards, and that's it. That's one of the things that I kind of struggle with. It's just me personally as a Hearthstone
Yeah.
player for creative buy decks.
Mhm.
It's one little thing might be I'm a bit lazy right now,
Yeah. Yeah.
not
Yeah.
as like super locked in as before, but also I always love those decks when you can calculate even from the beginning, like knowing whether you're trying to get aggressive or not, knowing what you have in your hand, what style
Yep.
of what style of cards you might have. Maybe for Priest, sometimes you play super defensive, but maybe
Yep.
I don't see the super defensive line because I don't have that level of calculation in terms of having the mana pool, a spell pool, and all those like dragons in mind.
Yeah. I think I struggled with that too a long time.
Mhm.
When I know even before I had my foot pedal, and I wasn't as fast. So I know when originally sort of Lackey Rogue came out, I forgot what it was called at the time.
Passage Road, I
Um,
feel like, or was it?
what
Was
this
it
is
before
way
Passage?
back when with but I think it was Dr. Boom was out, and we just rotated all
So
the other.
when like Evil Miscreant first came out, it was a 3 mana
Yeah.
1/5, right?
Yeah, but there was just all this created by from that,
Hmm.
with the ethereal lackeys, and I wasn't very good at that. And I would play so I played Control Warrior, but that was less creative. But it still had the Omega, but it wasn't the same degree as like lackeys, where you had this. Rogue, I find very hard because it's very hard to calculate. It's probably because of my least favorite class, because everything is so. Your turn on one individual turn,
Mhm.
you can go 12 different ways,
Yeah, the possibilities or the choices that overlaps, you can branch out like a tree.
Yeah. And you can't think of like, oh, what am I going to do this rogue turn? You have to be completely flexible where, oh, I hit this card off my ethereal lackey, or I hit this card now from my draw from my field contact.
Hmm.
And so you have to have everything down really well. Where
Yeah, you're
I remember when I used to
constantly
play.
zigzagging and thinking on the fly.
Yeah, when I used to play Cyclomage, I don't know if you played that one with the Mountain Giants back in the day.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah.
but that one, see, that had it created by two, but it was a lot more predictable. Like
For
I could say,
Mana
okay,
Cyclone.
I'm gonna go Arcane Intellect this turn. I'm going to do a sorceress apprentice mana cycle on this turn. I have a Ray of Frost, a coin, maybe no coin, but I have two a magic trick, so I'm guaranteed to be able to fill up my hand. So I can always go Mountain Giant for 3 the following turn and Conjurer's Call, and you can calculate all that, and you can set up, and I can think multiple turns ahead. So I'm like, okay, I can't use these resources, but this resource I have to use maybe another spot because I'm going to be filling up my hand here because I'm going to be doing this play. So I don't want to overdraw. Like there's that level of calculation, but with Rogue, it's really not that, and that doesn't really pay to play to my strength. So I can learn Rogue, but like every time I'm learning Rogue, it doesn't come naturally to me because it's so just in the moment. You have to just make decisions. You can't really. It's a lot harder, in my opinion, to think I'm saving this resource. You know, you have to be so flexible.
Yeah. You
Like
just
that.
can't be really locked in on
Yeah.
one or two ideas. You need to like constantly look for better ideas along with what you're creating, what we're creating through all those cards or what you're drawing. Speaking of Cyclone Mage, it's actually quite interesting. You walk into the public at the end of like 2018, which is 2018 HCT is actually a very flourishing year for the competitive scene, competitive Hearthstone in general, but just on your resume, it seems like you haven't went through a lot of that, and then the only thing, or like the first appearance you made to the public is actually at the end of the 2018. It's one of the DreamHack, I believe, or it's a HCT tour stop, HCT tour stop Philadelphia. You got the champion out of that, and then I actually did a little bit digging. Before that, you only attended one preliminary or playoffs, regional playoffs back in the HCT days. So how do you start with playing Hearthstone quite seriously?
Yeah. I just so I have chronic pain stuff. I think it's well known. I don't use I use a hands-free setup to play Hearthstone. And for a long time, I kind of quit video games because I played a ton, and that's part of like related to how I developed the injuries. But yeah, it's a thing of I didn't play video games and I just would do things. So I'd be out a lot, and I was like, in my mind, I was also kind of like, the one thing that maybe it's good that I hurt my hands because now I don't waste so much time playing video games, because now I have
Oh
to go.
yeah, come to the bright side.
Yeah. So, but but then, so I'd be going out to bars a lot. And then at my job, I was working insurance. I used all the hands-free technology. So, and my hands were even worse than they are now currently, because they finally gotten better. We'll maybe talk about that later, to a point where I have about 20 to 25% usage of a normal person, which kind of, but anyways, my hands start doing so bad in 2016, where like if I'm at a bar and like I shake someone's hand, it's hurting me. If people rub up into my arms, it's hurting me. And then it's awkward because you want to be this, like when if you're out of the bar, you don't want to be this like, oh, don't touch me, it hurts, like, because then that's not very confident. That's not very, attractive. People aren't like, they're like, all right, don't want to touch you. Like,
well,
nice
in general, nobody wants to be in that position. That's for sure.
Yeah. So it's awkward. So I just stopped, like, I was doing improv comedy as well, but I was finding even just like all the movements in improv comedy were hurting me, just like being like, I was having a hard time doing it. So I was like, I just kind of need a video game. And I was playing Path of Exile for a while, where I'd play like minion builds and I just run around and I just would click. So I wouldn't have to do a lot of clicking. But I was like, this is annoying because I'd have to like do certain things that were more difficult. And then my brother told me like, you should just play Hearthstone. And I started playing Arena because I was like, I don't want to buy all these cards. That's stupid. I'll just play Arena.
Yeah, nobody wants to do that.
Yeah. And I played Arena for like a month. And then I had gotten all these cards from playing Arena. And like, I was playing a lot.
A month? Is that a record or something? Getting all those competitive or just construct cards by.
Oh, I didn't get I didn't get all the constructed cards. I got a lot of Frozen Throne packs. So from playing Arena, because it's all, and I was spending money, like, but it was a thing of like, at the time, it felt very cheap
Yeah,
because I was
we've all
like,
been
oh,
there. We finally kneel to Blizzard.
yeah,
Kudos to
yeah.
you. Good game, bro.
Well, no, this was the beginning because that's what I say. Like everyone's like, oh, Hearthstone's too expensive, and I'm like, if you go out to a bar on a Saturday night, you're like, yeah, I just paid $11 for a drink, like, but so it's we act like Hearthstone's the only thing that's a little too expensive, maybe. There's stuff that's expensive everywhere, and for me, I was like, oh, I can spend $6 because it'd be like $1.99 or for an
Mhm.
arena ticket, and then that occupied a Friday night, and I was having a lot of fun. So I was like, oh, this isn't, it costs money, but it's not that bad. And then I was like, oh, I should play constructed. I'm getting all these cards, and I started off with some Zoo Warlock, but I
Hmm.
happened to just coincidentally get like Raza and Shadow Reaper Anduin and Blood Mage Thalanos all. So all I had to
Ooh.
craft was, all I had to craft was I think what's the like are the old 7/7. I can't
I
remember his
think it's
name.
Kazakus, or is it? Oh,
Oh, I
Velen.
had I had to craft
Velen.
Kazakus as well. Yeah, Valen.
Mm.
I had to craft
Yeah,
Valen and
Prophet Velen.
Kazakus. That's all I had to craft. I just have high rolled into all those legendaries. I got like 5 packs from Gadgestand, and I happened to get Kazakus because I was like, oh, I'll get.
Yeah, so for the people out there, all we those GMs, we started out high rolling, man, in every
Yeah,
aspect.
yeah, high rolling our packs. Yeah. So I played that, and I got to legend, I think, and then like the first month, I think it took me towards. I think I was like about 22 days in, but it was hard because arena was more tempo style, and I didn't understand a lot of the stuff. Where with priest is a lot more, defensive, and also the combo as well, but was a very different skill set. And I think that kind of influenced my long term. But that was my first legend deck, and then I eventually, as the next expansion, I started doing it's a lot of cube warlock as well, and those are like sort of my
But
two most played decks
but
in the
if I'm
beginning.
not being mistaken, it was somewhere like at the beginning of 2018, right? It sounds like the meta is like the beginning of 2018.
Oh, that's when I started doing well in the competitive scene. Or
I mean, at the end of 2018, it was when you started your first playoffs appearance. But there's about a 10-month gap there if you started playing
yep,
constructed in at the beginning of 2018. Then
yeah. So I started playing constructed at more at the end of 2017, and then
hmm.
it was pretty fast relative to like. But I think I'm learning off everybody else,
Mm-hmm.
so it's a thing of like it sounds nice, but the reality is a huge amount of the skill set is keeping up with the meta and like knowing your decks.
Mm.
So I always say this to like I'll do coaching for students, and students say, oh, I can't beat a better player. I'm like, yes, you can, because you can be more on top of your game. You can know the deck well. A certain game like chess, for example, if you're up against it was 2600 and you're 2000 or whatever, very, very unlikely you're going to win. But not only this has the RNG element, but you could actually outplay the person because, oh, they didn't know this element of your deck. They didn't know this play. You had everything you
Yeah,
had done
because
well.
Hearthstone actually, even more so with the created by meta, people
Yeah.
started to, there are a lot of spots that you haven't seen before.
Mhm.
It's just more spots out there for you to be able to get an edge, even though getting
Yeah.
to that spot might be rare. But for more created by decks coming in, actually we're getting less now, but it's okay comparing to before. There's a lot of edge, just top 100 players, or like top 200, just ladder
Yeah.
players have. Even us GMs, we just don't know, even though we are GMs.
Yeah. The game is really complex, and I'm never sure whether like, because right now, I mean, it's just become a meme of like, oh, created by, I would win. I would be the best player in the world if it wasn't for this created by bull crap, like, and I think, there's always a scapegoat because I played poker for a living for a while too. Um, and out of college, because I was having the health problems, it was something I could do. And the defense mechanisms people had were insane, where they would just do anything they could, but like take
if
responsibility for
if
them.
they have if people have excuses, they will use them.
Yeah. So I always wonder from Blizzard's perspective,
Hmm.
how do you know like what's an excuse versus what's like,
Oh, for them to review like the feedbacks of even pro players to me semi pro players and to general Hearthstone players, like
yeah.
some like what you were gonna say is something like, hey, maybe sometimes they are just spur of the moment and being angry and just wanted to find something to blame to.
Yeah, because everybody says they hate the created by meta, and I'm not sure if I do. Like, I'm not sure if it's bad. I don't. I mean, it's a hard thing because I definitely like, I like when I played Galakron Warlock versus Galakron Shaman, and
Hmm.
I knew exactly they have these many threats. I have these many clears. I need to do this. Like, I need to have an answer for this. I need to have an answer for that. Or if I don't, I have to win right here, because if the game goes long, I might not be able to win. And I like that very calculated style.
The
Um,
predictability.
yeah, but I'm not sure. It's a different element of the game where you have to do your plays are less what I call like to the edge with
Hmm.
created by. So if I know the maximum you can deal is 4 damage to my minions, and I can get my minions to 5 health, bam, they're invincible. I
Mhm.
know, and then I can know I could set up a lethal. There's things you could this, but in created by, it's like, or I throw a palm reading on top of it. This is why people get this, like, oh, I'm like, oh, as long as I don't do, my opponent doesn't do, let's say 5 damage on turn 4, and they happen to have Blade Master Apotheosis and the Powered Feast,
Uh-huh.
like, and you're like, you thought you had one for sure, and all of a sudden they kill your board and heal the full and
Yeah,
develop.
that's
And
when the incalculability
yeah,
really hurts you, as not only most of the time it's skill testing for you as the player who's
mhm,
piloting the deck, but also for you being an opponent versus a deck like a priest. You
yeah,
just get beat by a lot of unpredictability, and then that's one of the biggest reasons I feel like everybody's frustrating with priest, on top of
yeah,
illusia. So going back, we were talking about the 2018 journey when you
mhm,
started, hey, trying to try hard in Hearthstone. So just take us back to, hey, when you started playing constructed, and when you
mhm.
felt like, or when you found, oh, there's actually an esports scene, and when did you
Yeah,
start to attend tournaments? Because like we said,
mhm.
there's actually a 10 month or period when you started playing constructed to you really started to attending tournaments.
Yeah. I So originally I didn't really know how big the scene was.
Hmm.
I played arena, so I watched Crip because like Crip played arena, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't watch Twitch at all. Like I kind of knew Twitch existed. I didn't know how big a thing it was, and I just was kind of looking. I was just like, oh, I'd like to play in some tournaments, and I went on Battlefy, and I would like play in these tournaments. They're like, oh, if you do well in this tournament, you can go to this other thing, which I didn't even know about. I just looked for stuff and started doing it. The scene is actually a lot more simpler now, where you just play Masters Tour qualifiers and then you go to Masters Tour. But there's a lot more. There's all these and then I wanted to go to a dream hack. So you thought I went to dream hack. I went to HET Philadelphia,
Mm-hmm.
and I was living at Connecticut at the time, and that's part of the reason I actually was like wanting to move out, because Connecticut has special gambling laws, because we have Mohegan Sun and Foxwoods there, which are two of the biggest casinos in the world, and they're allowed
Uh-huh.
to gamble there, but you're not allowed to gamble in the state. And because you have to pay to go to DreamHack, it's considered gambling.
Is
So
that,
they just say on
oh,
the website, if you live in Connecticut and like one other or two other states, you can't play in this tournament. And I was so frustrated. And then I even
oh
went on
my God, I
competitive.
didn't even know that. Is, oh.
Yep. And I went on competitive Hearthstone, and I was like, this is bull crap. And I got zero sympathy. They're like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Like people just sort of like did not care. And then I was like, well, either I thought, because at the old system, if you didn't do all these events, it'd be hard for you to get HGT points. So it'd be harder to like, qualify as I was learning about the system.
Mhm.
So I was like, oh, I gotta move back to Chicago, and I was getting kind of sick of Connecticut anyways. But because then I wouldn't have, be bestowed on this crappy rule for dream hacks.
Yeah, for sure, man.
But what was I gonna say? But then
But
the system
then
all changed. Was
Mhm.
so then it was just
no
which
more,
I,
no more dream hack.
yeah. So I think that's the biggest negative about, because I like the Masters Tour qualifier system a lot better. I had a
Ooh.
full-time job back when I was this. So I'm not gonna stay up till 3 a.m. playing, because that's when it stopped, trying to get a top 100 finish. Like that was, then I screw up my work day the next day. And it was on the last day of the month. And my job, we were always busy on the first of the month because it was booking stuff. So we'd have
Mm.
all the stuff. So it wasn't a day where I can be like, oh, lazy. I had to be on top of things. So, I'm like,
all those
how do
factors.
yeah. So I'm like, how do I beat these 17-year-olds who don't have, who could just stay at 3 a.m.
Playing
and,
children's card game.
yeah,
Sitting
like
at
I'm
their
an
home.
adult. Yeah,
Grinding
exactly. So
24/7.
I know. So, but now then they switched it to where it's like on weekends mainly. So I could work during the week and then grind on the weekends. And I liked, I think at first took too long because it was the Swiss system, but I liked that better because that was, if you, and I also like that it was, I find I would always tell myself, because people be like, oh, this is bull crap. I can't get first. I don't get to go to Master 2 qualifier. And my mindset is always like, I always want number one, that's what I'm always
Mm.
aiming towards. So I'm like thinking, if I can't win a Masters Tour qualifier, why do I think I'm going to win at Masters Tour, where everybody's good. And, it's, why do I have, so I think it's an element of, you have to like, to be one of the absolute best, you have to be defying the odds. So I kind of have this mindset of, because people be complaining about that. Like, if I can't beat that, why do I think I'm going to go and win Masters Tour, So that's kind of was my mindset. So, so I just grind them out. And I think I qualified for Vegas. And then I didn't qualify for the next one, but then I was qualifying for the tournaments, everyone after that. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, for those of you who don't know, Nohandsgamer actually missed the Master Store Soul, but he actually got every one of them later on, even though you didn't qualify them through getting good results from the previous Master Swords. It was all through grinding through the qualifiers, and I believe it didn't took you very long for every qualification, right?
I got better and better at them, but I know the hardest one was, so I got laid off in, I think, 2019. No, in 2020. This is like after, no, 2019. This was kind of after Vegas, and I was trying to qualify for the Texas one, and I was
Arlington.
really struggling. It was the Evolve Shaman meta.
Oh yeah,
But I had all this time, and I was kind of like trying to think, I was kind of taking a shot. I was like also looking for jobs, but I was like kind of taking my shot at being full-time Hearthstone professional. And I was like, if I can't do this, like, I was like, I'm gonna buckle down. And I think I had 1 month to like try and get a ladder finish, because I also had to turn the tournaments.
but
And yeah.
But to clarify, at that time you were just really trying to shoot for the GM status, right?
Yep. Once they announced the GM, I was trying to do that because I thought that was like the pathway to being, a full-time pro.
So,
Yeah.
did winning the HCT Philadelphia did anything for you in terms of maybe your mindset, maybe it ups your confidence in your commitment and whatnot?
Yeah, I think that was like, that kind of put me on the map in the scene. And then I was kind of like, I kind of just knew I could beat the best. So just like having that, like, I know with the right preparation and the right situation, I can win. And I felt on the last day I played okay, but the day before, because I was 3-2 on day one, and then I just won every single match. on my second day too. And I think I lost one game. Like, so I was all 3-0s and one loss, which was insane. But I just was so on, and my brain was just working really well. And I'm always trying to like, get that brain because it
Is
wasn't,
that
I was getting lucky, but I just was seeing the lines.
is that how you win? Is that how you win in Hearthstone? Get your brain working.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Do you not try to get your brain working? Like it's do you feel like there's a range in your brain? Like some days you play amazing and some days you play meh,
You just tapped into something. You tapped into something basically.
Yeah, but I'm trying, it's like if you're in like some anime, they hit some new power level and they kill the boss, but then they can't hit that new power level again. It's like I'm always trying to get it back,
Yeah,
so
we need to, chase the high basically.
yeah. Yeah, I know.
So,
So, yeah.
So in your 2020, actually it's a big year for you. For the Master Source, you got into top 8 in the online Los Angeles stop. So
Yep.
that's what got you into GM basically. What was it like when you're like on the cusp of qualifying for GM, and also being at the last days of Swizz, and also just switching from offline event to online event? Does that help you?
Yeah. Online event is nice because I have my whole setup. I don't have to like bring it. I don't have to be on a smaller computer for my setup. So I have my natural kind of hands-free setup with a bigger screen, which can make a big difference. And I think, also we could use deck tracker, which I think benefits me more than it benefits other people, because like they can write stuff down a lot easier. Where historically, if I wrote too much stuff down, it might hurt my
I'm a
head.
note taker. I'm a note taker. So
Yeah.
I heavily feel like note taking has been benefiting me a lot in those events, and also it keeps you concentrated.
Yeah.
A lot of benefits.
I think I had one notes that I took at HET Vegas where I just had like bombs and then a tally mark. So I just would count how many bombs that was in my deck. That's like the only notes I would take.
Oh yeah.
But, yeah.
So the pandemic actually, in a weird way, helped you a lot in terms
Yeah.
of competitively smooth things out for you.
Yeah, but I do miss. I hope things go back to where people are competing in person, because
Yeah.
it's just more like soulful and makes you feel alive. Like
Yeah,
going
for
to these
sure.
things.
And all those winners gets all those people congratulating him, and also interviewing people just sharing their experience. Oh, I just lost to a top deck, yada yada.
Yeah,
Get that out of your system every round.
Yeah. And then you get to also, you get to look in as the life leaves your opponent's eyes as you crush them, So
Oh yeah,
you
I
don't get
always
that
have
when it's on.
I always have the body language in. I stare at my opponent, or sometimes I
Yeah.
give him a little look, or trying to intentionally rope or something. Um, but after you got into GM, everything was doing really well. It seems like you really starting a career with competitive Hearthstone. So for those who are wondering, is it viable to just make Hearthstone your full-time career, full-time job, or your main focus in your life? What do you have to say?
I'd say it's a horrible idea,
Mm.
but you do it because you can't stop yourself, It's a thing of, well, also I've noticed like right now, one of the reasons I do well is I'm a pro now. What does that mean? I put in the work every single day. There's a lot of pros, I think, who did really well from the old scene where you actually could make huge amounts of money, where it was a good time to be a pro. Now it's not really a good time to be a pro. But for a while, Tice, making $100,000 on a single tournament, there's just huge amounts of money to be made. So players might make money in one tournament that I've made in my whole,
Whole
my whole
career.
career. And just the prize pool is bigger. But I think the game got harder, the game got smaller, and the players got better. So it's a thing of, I have this mindset of like, I'm a pro. That means I show up to work. I practice every day. Like I put in the work. I put in the time. I do it when I don't feel like it. So I think a lot of players are like, oh, the meta is so boring. And I'm like, you haven't worked in insurance. Like, you don't know what boring is. Like when you're having to like go this and you try and get excited by the fact of like, oh, this new technology is gonna do that. Like it's like Hearthstone is so much more exciting, even with whatever bullshit you think it is. So I'm kind of like, I'm a pro. I'm gonna show up. I'm gonna practice. I'm gonna do that. And I think just because I have that, like, this is my job right now, that gives me a big edge. And I'm almost afraid somebody will listen to this and be like, oh yeah, I should practice. And then all of a sudden they start like, yeah, Nohandsgamer is no longer in first place in GM. He's getting crushed because all the other GMs realize like, oh, practicing helps, like, and they all practice. But even things like right now it's off season and I'm still practicing. I'm trying to get on top of the game, keep my game sharp, so I can be on top of things. What's the stress of the season? So it's just stuff like that. Even, I think part of the reason my Twitch, I've had the GM success, which helped my Twitch a lot this season. But just like one of the things being successful on Twitch is just showing up to work, putting it up and streaming, and
yeah, for
YouTube
streaming,
too.
for streaming, you're just really trying to get the compound interest started to rolling. And the most important thing for compound interest is you don't stop. You don't let it stop.
Yeah.
You let it keep going. So for you, so you said as a pro, you show up to work and you're trying to make a living out of it, even though one of the biggest not necessarily a criticism, or just even if you're a GM in Hearthstone, in the Hearthstone scene, there's only like 4.5 months you are really earning. You're really earning for your output, basically. And then the rest of the year you just really need to try to make yourself busy. One of the great things I love about you is you're really trying to put in the work, or just at least trying to make content for the audience out there. I really love what you're trying to do right now.
Thank you. Yeah, it's you gotta do something, and especially in COVID, it's not like I have all these other options for my time. So it's like, it's fun. It's something I've wanted to do for a long time. Is I have just these ideas, and it's fun being like, I really enjoyed. I made the tempo video on my YouTube channel recently that people really liked, and that's not like the most profitable or like view clicky like form of content is you just make this broken deck guide, new broken deck, 89% win rate, easy legend. Like it's all, if you look at like the YouTube clickbait, it's all like best deck to climb. This deck is so strong. Like, and I think that's fine, but it's kind of, if you want to get legend, stop focusing on, like, the truth is you can get a legend with any of those decks. You can do well with any of those decks.
Yes. I've been there, I'll share a personal experience here. When I started to stream, I stream at the Chinese platform Douyu, and then in the Chinese platform, as I was started to grow, I have those communities that I built up, and those group chats, and people will come and ask me, hey, what's the legend deck right now? What's the or what's the top 1000 deck right now, or what's the diamond deck right now? I've always like, if there are actually some meta choices, and then the meta choices is usually like 6 to 10 decks. Whatever choice you make out of those pools, the deck will be fine. So just pick the deck you like, you feel comfortable with, and then just start trying to refine your craft, basically based on the deck that you're really interested in. That's what I say to everyone who asks me if they want to get better at Hearthstone, or hit a certain rank.
I think the thing is, like, people don't want, like, oh, just stick to a deck and you'll do fine. They want this delusion of, I just happen to get the deck that no one else knows about. I get the easy legend. So it's you're just keep selling this, like, and people just keep jumping. I kind of like to have the analogy of, it's like the same people that jump decks are the people who are like serial monogamous, where they break up with someone and they go with somebody else, because there's always like this new person is going to be this, like this new deck is going to solve all my problems. I'm never going to get high rolled. I'm just
Yeah,
going to win all the
get
time.
a new partner. Just get
Exactly.
a new
Yeah.
partner.
You're like, oh, this partner
It's
hasn't
not my
kept up with the
problem.
meta, like let's get a new one, like so
Well,
it's yeah.
speaking of trying to see the lines of the meta and looking for the secret decks, you are really famous. For those of you who might not know or might do, Nohandsgamer has been the inventor or pioneer of a lot of decks. Two of the most famous ones was the Quest Malygos Warlock, and the other one is
That was Galakron Warlock. I was never the Quest Malakos Warlock.
oh, it was the Galakon Warlock, and then what?
I think.
Oh,
Oh, I just found out about the Quest Malagos Warlock. Yeah, I didn't come up with that at all. I think that was somebody on
but
the Chinese scene, but I think
yeah,
Galakron Warlock I did come up with.
but then Galakron Warlock, he really brought to the scene, and then also the famous or infamous Enrage Warrior. Yeah, Enrage Warrior is so you've had a great track record of refining or just coming up with very refreshing decks that people might have thought about at the time of the meta. Even Cube Priest would be a good a notable mention. So
Yeah.
for those players and people out there who's really like interesting in deck building and then just reading the meta, or just as a chef, you just look at what the ingredients is in front of you. You look at your collections. You just looking at, hey, well, what's out there, and trying to make up something new. So, well, what's the secret of the chef?
It's super hard, and I think it's a thing of, it also takes a huge, it's not this like thing that it's something where if you try and you do the right things, you eventually hope to get lucky, like get lucky and hit something that works. Because I think it's a thing of, if the idea was obvious, people had already thought of it. But even so, things like Galakron Warlock, I think, was the first deck that I had also made a Wounded Warrior back in the day, which was a inferior version of Aggro Warrior, but it was based off, like, I had been playing Highlander Warrior, and it was I really liked using like damage minions, buffing them up, blood sworning them, and then using Neverset Ritualist to heal them. So I kind of went all in on that. And so later on, like in Rage Warrior, it had a lot of those elements. But Galakron Warlock, I just was playing, and I loved Warlock, but I made all these unsuccessful Warlock archetypes before then. And I just was like, I know Plague of Flames is a good card, and I would do really well with Galakron Warlock until I just hit a bunch of aggro, and then I stopped doing well. And I kept on trying to figure out like what is going wrong. And I was like, I'm not sure about these Mountain Giants, because everyone was just auto running Mountain Giants in any Warlock deck pretty much at the time. Because the problem was, this was the first thing, and this is why you can't just shove in 30 good cards, because the problem is cards can have synergy, anti-synergy. So the problem with Mountain Giant and Twilight Drake, where, well, if you have Mountain Twilight Drake, you want to tap on 3, but with Warlock, you wanted to play either Fiendish Rites before it got unjustly nerfed to 4, or the
unjustly nerfed.
Unjustly, yeah. It just literally was, I invented that deck, like came out a week before, and they're just like, we'll just nerf it. And so it's a history of Blizzard nerfing my decks. But then they had the whatever, the 3-mana summon 2/1/1s, gain the attack for each minion on the board. And then you wanted to go Devoted, and you wanted to try to chain that off. And the problem is they were different game plans. So one, I cut those cards, and then I was trying to find other cards to replace them. And I kept trying, and then I was like, maybe I just put these sacrificial packs in because like we could use the heal, and I put in one at first and it started working, and I put in the second. And then I had an Expired Merchant, and I switched the Expired Merchant to SNP, which made the Warlock with one was good with Plague of Flames, and 2, it had synergy with Ziliax. So I did that, and then all of a sudden the deck started killing it,
So it looks like, so from what I'm hearing, you've been trying a lot. You've been constantly trying, and we all know you for your winners, but there's also a lot of
Exactly.
non-winners. Yeah, not
Yeah.
of non-winners, not that are not, you know, performing in the meta, but you are still constantly trying it. So why brings you to not sticking to the meta decks, you know, trying to climb
Um,
higher ranks, you know, get the dopamine dose into your brain,
I'm
but
doing that
to
less
try
now.
to
I
try
did it
to
a lot then because one, I had a certain style. If you look at most of my decks, my most played classes and most of my decks are Warlock and Priest. Those are my favorite two classes.
so what was the period of time if you're describing this
But this
throughout
was,
your
that's like
Hearthstone career?
I started building decks. So my buddy Last Champ is a very good deck builder.
Hmm.
And we kind of, we went to Vegas together. We qualified back-to-back weekends. And we've actually done this multiple times. He isn't playing much now in the scene, but even people don't know, like even in Rage Warrior, we talked about, he had a kind of initial prototype and then I built all these other things to it. So that was kind of a thing of, that was both of us together. But then it was just completely us. We had nobody else on
Hmm.
that. But like he kind of said like, oh, you could do deck building because he had done a bunch of deck building stuff. And I realized deck building is just like, you just have an idea and you're like sick of whatever this, and you just say, I'm going to build my own thing. And it's not as hard as you think to make something bad. It's just hard to make something good, but you usually start off with something bad and then you just start like min maxing. That's what I usually do. I start off with something like, and you're like, oh, this card isn't working. This card is working. Oh, this card isn't working. This card is working. And sometimes you'll hit like a local maximum, but sometimes you hit an actual maximum, like an actual, top where it's really good. So like figuring out, okay, what can I cut? And then what can I get? That's kind of my style of deck building, is like, I
Just
have an idea, I have certain things, and I just cut and replace.
so it's constantly trying to get a summary of your game and just having takeaways from your games and then trying to, you know, fix here, fix there, trying to
Yeah.
try different ideas. Maybe this deck is overall have very good cards throughout the game, but it's
Mhm.
inconsistent. Maybe you want it
Yeah.
to be more consistent, just cut off the high end stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then after that, you for people out there who really wants to, you know, try new things, you can always like No Hand says, just try it right away if you have any ideas, and just jam
Yeah.
it in and see how it goes, right?
And I
Because
think people could, yeah.
nobody thought the sacrificial pack was any good. It was like a forgotten card in Hearthstone for like
Yeah.
10,000 years.
I think is part of the reason it wasn't blocked in my mind is I had seen it played in Wild,
Hmm.
so I was like, oh, this card can work in certain situations, because I was
Not
like, why are they
completely
using Dark
dead.
Pact? Yeah. So just not having that blockage. So I know like both, I think me and John Bray do this. We'll just like, sometimes we're trying to this, we just go through every single card and see like what speaks to you. And that's how I found Sacrificial Pack. I was just like going through every single card and I was like, 0 mana heal 5 demon, maybe that'll work, and it did. Like, but it was a thing. Sacrificial Pact worked for a lot of reasons, but it was literally me just trying things out. And believing that there was something with Galcon Warlock because the Plague of Flames was so strong, and the consistency of the Veiled Worshipper card draw was so good. And I think people underestimated that. So, and people be like, oh, I can't win with this deck. Because I had actually gotten top 10 legend, and this just shows you don't need perfect decks. I think I got a rank 4 legend with a Mountain Giant version of Galakron Warlock like 2 weeks before I got my
My
my version
sacrificial
of it.
pack idea.
Yeah,
Your
I think I
sacrificial.
actually got it, and then the next day I qualified for the Master Tour, and then I was playing on ladder, and I played it. I lost it. I was kind of didn't care because I'd already qualified, but I
Mhm.
lost like 20 games in a row or something ridiculous. And it was kind of funny where everybody was liking the stream, but all I was doing was losing. And it was just kind of this funny thing where, I was kind of just like tired and autopilot. But yeah. But anyways, the bottom line is you don't
Mm.
need a perfect, like a lot of players get #1 legend with their decks. And I think people think, oh, is this deck good? And I'm like, no, it's their style. It plays to their strengths. It puts them in situations where they can outplay their opponents. And I think that's something that we have like, I feel like we have two schools of thought in Hearthstone. We have one, like the hardcore data scientists where you're like, you just gotta jam the best decks. And then you got
Mm.
these people who are like, no, they still believe in the best decks, but they just don't believe in the data. No, this is the best deck. And really,
I'm
it's
the
more,
data scientist. I
yeah,
don't.
yeah. They're like, the data scientists don't know what they're talking about. The deck I'm playing is the best deck. And then I kind of have the view of, you're not going to play Hearthstone perfectly. No one is. So putting yourself, the way that to do well is put yourself in situations where you make less mistakes than your opponent. I think that's a huge thing that people don't think about very often. So
Yeah, we so for now we're taping this in July the 17th, and then we really just got the nerves kicking in. So
yeah,
trying to switch gears here. For the nerves, upcoming nerves. Well, what do you have? What do you have in mind? You are a big priest,
yeah,
basically advocate to a certain degree, and then your priest got nerfed two times, two cards out of it, and then
yeah,
dribbling is token druid. You've been playing token druid a lot in
yeah,
your GM games, so certainly token druid is a deck that you like. So what do you make
yeah.
of it?
It's a whole, I kind of was playing some Rush Warrior, and I played like a Rush Warrior ton of the first weekend, but I don't find it as fun anymore. And that it just feels like what they could say, the arena deck. I think it was more fun when I had the shields and when Crab Rider had Wind Fury, because you could actually go for wins. Um, and but now it's just like I'm just shoving these efficient plays over and over again. I do maybe the big hand buff, but it doesn't feel as interesting to me anymore. The deck
Hmm.
I might want to like spend the next 2 weeks playing is, I've thought about playing a bunch of Miracle Rogue because I'm not good at it, and it's a deck I really struggle with stylistically. And I did
Hmm.
okay with it. I brought it to, but I don't. It's such a high skill deck, and I think
Yeah. I
it'd
wouldn't
be
say
a
I
good deck
play
to
like
work on.
yeah, I wouldn't say I played super well on the deck, but certainly that deck comes more natural to me. I've had
Yeah,
very great experience with the old Miracle deck with the gadgets and auctioneer and all that.
yeah,
So I've had success, and then also I love this style of deck because, like I said, the Miracle Baroque right now is actually also a rare deck that you play while hugging your deck. So
hmm
you just have to calculate through what you have in your deck, and then your damage through knowing the Octobug stuff. It's quite fun.
hmm
It's quite fun.
yeah. So I think maybe the last 2 weeks, because I actually really like the experience of playing the same deck over and over again and getting to the point of mastery of it. And I think that's where you actually grow as a player the most. And that's kind of what I was saying. Like, I haven't made many decks because I've come to realize GM is less about like your strongest link usually than about like your weakest link. So it's, if you make some great new deck, well, it's only one deck and you still need three others. And if it's really
Hmm.
good, everybody's just going to copy it next week. But
So
if you bring experimentation, it fails. Well, then you just get absolutely screwed. So
So from GM, and then also for the format that we are doing, the format for GM mainly is still Conquest. That's why you say the weakest link is what you're trying to avoid,
yeah,
not
hmm
necessarily have like one or two like super strength, right?
yeah,
Hey, for those of you listening out there, that means that's the main reason the magician has retired. Not trying to finding the new decks because it's not a good of an edge to trying to make up for playing
yeah.
suboptimal
It's just
on other
it's a
decks.
waste of time. Like it's just not energy efficient.
Mm,
So I'll maybe once GM season ends, it's fun to build new decks, but it's a huge amount of time and energy and failing. Um, so I think people think the best players make the best decks, and it's not necessarily. It's the players, then they can be the best players, but it's the players who tried the most, to make new decks.
mm.
So I think some of the best sort of, we had, like, if we look at like the best fan made decks of the year, I think, I'm not sure who made Small Spell Mage, but that was, I thought, was like a really good Turtle Mage, obviously, like that came out and somebody just had that idea of like, I'm going to use potions with that 8-drop. That was a brilliant deck idea, even if people hated it, but people also loved it.
Ah,
We had, I think, so Funky Monkey invented Libram Paladin,
hmm.
which was, and Funky Monkey's making, crazy decks all the time. And then all of a sudden he starts winning and he gets like top 200 legend. And he's used to being, and like, and that's how like when, because then people think like, oh, I'm 7-4 this deck at top 2000 legend. I think it might be a meta breaker. And I'm like, let's get to top 200 and then we'll talk, it's because when you actually make a meta breaker, not only is it a best deck, no one else is playing it, the meta isn't countering it, and you have the information advantage of like, you've played the deck and no one's played against it. So sometimes playing a brand new deck can have that advantage of people don't know how to play against it. So
Yeah.
even if it's not the perfect deck, like people make more mistakes.
Yeah, for sure, especially on the ladder, because in tournaments it's open deck lists, and then also you face better players, and
Yep.
at certain times people get to have time to practice. So even in master stores, I tend to, if I really want to try hard and do well, I tend to avoid bringing super fresh ideas. But also for you, by the way, just to say out there, well, welcome to the data scientist club.
Yeah, it's I mean, I'm all about I don't know, it's a weird thing where there's this weird contention where, so I think from the perspective of like the pure data scientists, they only see like, they're not playing enough necessarily to know, like from, I think the really good example with a data scientist, like the two examples I have with a data scientist who I thought were completely wrong. And was, the first one I had was in Big and Druid. I don't know if you remember in Big and Druid. It had amazing stats,
Yes.
did really well. And I had played against it and I'm like, this deck is garbage. I crushed this deck every single
Yes, I
time.
had the same experience. I never brought in Big and Druid.
Yeah. And I know even so, I got a 6-3, I think, at Masters Tour, the one in Texas. I can't remember the town. Arlington, yes.
Arlington was the one that I farmed a lot of in Big and Druid, and then I just got top 4, and then that's what got me into GM basically.
Yeah. Oh, I guess we both got into GM on the same. No, I got on the second one. So you got
Oh.
So it was like 2 back-to-back Masters Tours.
Yeah, but for us, we make it to the same season for GM.
Yeah, I think so. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, but when I put my lineup into HS replay at Legend, you say, what's the deck that does the best against you? And Big and Druid apparently is favored against all my decks. I should ban it. And I never banned it, and I had the best record against that deck than any other deck. But if you're the data scientist, you're looking at the deck and you're like, this deck is great, but any good player can just massively outplay it. It's so predictable. You can say this, like, I can have a 7-1 on board with a value tree and they don't have a way to punish. They have 2 swipes. And if they don't hit that, they have like no way to punish this. And if they play a swipe, well, guess what? They can't,
they have 0 reactive cards.
Yeah. I know they play swipe because their deck is so clunky. Well, they have an 8-drop. Well, now they have to just float 4 mana because they already played all their low curve. So they only have the high curve now. So it just was so, if you knew what you're doing, you could just annihilate it. But at first you're like, oh, this is super efficient stats. And I think Pure Paladin was another one of those where it was a very bad deck that the data scientist thought was really good at the beginning of, I think, like a last GM season. And any GM who tested it would play it and be like, this deck is terrible. But like, so there's certain things that I think you can know from playing that you can figure out much quicker. But there are also certain things, like amazing thing that I found for, this wasn't during GM season, but nobody brought this to Worlds, is World Kick Rogue, where nobody knew about World Kick Rogue. Barely anybody was playing it. Vicious Syndicate put out a report saying World Kick Rogue's really good. I play it. I go climb like crazy because I was like dumpster for me because I've been trying out bad ideas, and nobody knew about that. And it was like hiding in plain sight. So it's interesting where the data scientists can be wrong and where they can be right. And why doesn't anyone see World Kick Rogue? It's like, but like just sometimes the players get in there, they're all saying like, I think this is good. You think this is good? And you're like, yeah, I think this is good. And then no, you're wrong. It wasn't that good. Just everybody thought it was good, So it's, I think I like to have a balanced perspective where I look at the data, but I also like think about, does this deck actually like, do I actually think this deck is good? Do I win with it? Stuff like that. Do I struggle against it?
Yeah,
What I mean?
so it sounds like more you're like you just occasionally just come into the data scientist club and have a beer and then just hang and then just went out.
Yeah, I'm like, you guys are doing good work, but I'm not I know there are people, it's weird on both sides where they look at it as the data scientists are this pure infallible group, And the reality is I don't look at it as, well, so there's two things. One, I don't look at it as who's right. I think it's who's most likely to be right. Oh, 1 second. My charger isn't in. I'm just gonna 1 second. Don't look at it. So okay. With I don't look at it who's right. I look at who's most likely to be right. So who's most likely to be right? The data scientists every time. They are the most likely to be right. They have the largest sample size. But that doesn't mean they're right. It means they're most likely to be right. Now, as the meta gets more figured out, more time, you get more data, you get more sample, you get more people testing, you get more.
Yeah, the data and scientists get stronger by the minute.
Yeah,
their cases get stronger by the minute.
Yeah, but I think also, so I look at, but also, so back in the day, it was the data scientist versus pure opinion. But nowadays, the data moves a lot faster. You have HS replay, you have, which is bad data, but it's still better than no data. And you have the vision syncing report every week. So you have the data influencing the opinions of other people. So I'm not like just a pure, oh, I'm just playing and feeling it out. I'm looking at the data, I'm looking at my experiences. So what I'm saying is I'm not this like complete lack of data. I don't have as good a data. I'm not looking at as much. But I'm still looking at the data, even if it's worse data.
You gotta take HS replay into account and just as a head start sometimes.
Yeah, so it's a thing of, that's what I mean, where I can like, for example, if you like, the whole controversy, if you looked at Priest, even a top 1000 legend, never the top deck. Like, it's never really was that good. You go to legend or even worse, it never was a top deck. It's never been once. There's always a deck that's higher. There's always a deck that's doing better than it. But it was a deck that every top player is like, this is the best deck at the high level. So if you just take a pure, like, I'm going to jam the highest win rate decks, I don't think you'll be as successful as the players who actually like look at a more, well, what decks can I play at the highest level, stuff like that. So I think data is great. And I think, like I said, nobody's playing perfect. So it's a thing of, if I play a deck, so I remember I played you ever play backgammon?
Oh no! Please introduce this.
But yeah, there are. It's a probability game with dice that you move the pieces. But poker can be like this too, where there are plays that are considered in both poker and backgammon suboptimal plays. They are not the best play mathematically. That players will do knowing they're not the best play mathematically because they make the position complicated. They make the position more difficult, So it might be right to 4-bet somebody or always raise from the button, stuff like that. But somebody might call, somebody do think that is not a mathematically optimal play with the mindset that they are going to outplay their opponent later. I think there's a lot of that in Hearthstone, but the problem is we don't really know when it's happening. It's not, there aren't these clearly like, this is somebody outplaying someone in this situation. So at the end of the day, people just like play a deck, they do well with it, they don't, and they think this deck is good or this deck is not. But really, there's a lot of times where like them doing well with it isn't because the win rate's so high, is that it plays to their strengths and they outplay their opponents. I think that's something that data doesn't capture well at all. I think it doesn't.
But one thing but on top of what you're trying to say, one thing I find data really interesting is a lot of Hunter always do well. If there's a viable Hunter deck, Hunter always do well in lower ranks.
Yeah.
Because the idea of mixture of secrets sometimes it's hard to deal with. but also Hunter just don't gives you a lot of room it punishes your early terrible decisions most easily, basically.
Yeah.
It takes you out by 3 punches if you just don't plan your first few turns out perfectly.
Yeah. You just have to, I got my dad to, and he gets mad when I say this because he's like, I could get a legend, but I got my dad to legend with Face Hunter. But I just was like, I did him one coaching session. I'm like, wait, play your minion. He like didn't play the minion on 2. He saved it so he could go like minion coin like later. He just went hero power on 2. And I was like, just play your minions, spend your mana, play minions, and then he got to legend. But like, there's very simple rules with like a tempo deck that if you just spend your mana, you play minions, you keep playing minions, you just keep playing minions, that's going to get you to legend. And that's going to be the right play in like 85% of the time. And that's why people say those decks can be like, oh, brain dead, is because it's just a very simple rule will be the right. Now, there are certain exceptions where you do something a little different, you alter something. As you're a better player, you can get those little edges, but you're going to get so much of the skill of a deck by just doing those simple rules.
Yeah, also for suggestions for those out there, you start off with the 85% correct play mindset, and then you try to explore other options. That's what I have for guys out there. All right. So in the end, you as a priest master or just like a semi priest main, I would, for all those anti-priest player out there, I would like you to have a hopeful message to those guys other than the nerf. What do you have for these people? Well, I'm one of those people,
I don't think
but I just don't act not too excited when priest got nerfed. Yeah, so that's me.
I mean, I think priest mirrors are some of the highest form of Hearthstone, and I have this, if I go with a
it's hopeful message. Hopeful message.
You put me on the spot here. I'm trying to think of hopeful. It's like, it's like I mean, I guess the hopeful message is if you complain about priest enough, they'll nerf it even if it doesn't have a good win rate. So you could probably just keep doing that forever, and it will never be too big.
Yeah.
So that's the hopeful message.
Let's go.
Yeah.
because you know what, people's gonna play priest in the end. There's always gonna be people out there. I really appreciate Nohandsgamer. This is such a great start. Welcome. Thank you for coming to the Fireside. And then you guys can check out Nohandsgamer at everywhere. He has his own YouTube channel. Just on YouTube, search Nohandsgamer, and then he has his own Twitter, also Nohandsgamer. Twitch is twitch.tv/Nohandsgamer as well.
Yeah, so I'm lucky. I'm the only Nohandsgamer. So if you just Google me, it's pretty easy to find me.
Yeah, is there any upcoming things for you on your agenda? Any like new cards previewing for you? You want to have a shout out?
I think there might be, but I'm not gonna until I've fully confirmed it. I'm not gonna put anything out here quite yet. So
okay,
we'll see. So yeah.
Thanks again. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks, Alan.
All right.